So let's move ahead with question number 26. How can we create SharePoint workflow using SharePoint Designer? In order to understand it much better, what we will do is that we will create two task lists. One is an incomplete task list and one is a completed task list. And what we'll do is, if the user enters the task as in progress in the incomplete task list, it will stay as it is. But the time he marks this task as completed, the status as completed, it will move to the completed task list and it will get deleted from the incomplete task list. So the workflow is something like this. The user will create a task and enter the status of the task. If the task is incomplete, nothing will happen. If the task is marked as complete, the task will be copied to the incomplete task list and it will be deleted from the incomplete task list. Now we will create this workflow using SharePoint Designer, and I'm very much sure that after you see this video you will understand the power of SharePoint Designer to create custom workflows with just a click of a button. So the first thing we need to do is create two task lists, that is incomplete task list and a completed task list. You can create this task list using site actions, add a new library list or web page to this website, click on that, go to task, and you can create both of the task lists. So using this I have created two task lists. One is incomplete and another one is completed. Now we need to edit this site using SharePoint Designer. So do a Control C and let's go to the SharePoint Designer, File, Open Site, Control V, Open. Now this opens our website in a edit mode in the SharePoint Designer. So now let's add a workflow. So click on File, New, and just before adding the workflow, you can see that in the list you have a completed task list and incomplete task list. So basically you can view both of the task list in your SharePoint Designer. Okay, so click on File, go to Workflow, and let's give a nice name to it, My Workflow, and we are going to add this workflow, or we are going to invoke this workflow when somebody adds a task to the incomplete task list. So this workflow will be attached to incomplete and the workflow will start automatically, that is automatically start this workflow when a new item is created and when the new item is changed. So in other words, nothing will be manual, everything will be in auto mode. Now the second step would be to define the actions and conditions on the incompleted task list. So in the conditions I will say that compare the incomplete field, compare the status field. So if on the incomplete task list, if the status field is equal to completed, then from the actions, delete this item from this list and copy the list item to the completed task list. So it's very pretty much simple and UI oriented, nothing to really think about, no programming, nothing. And the power of SharePoint Designer, SharePoint Designer can really be seen. So what we have said is this workflow will invoke on the incomplete task list, and the workflow will invoke whenever a new item is created or when an item is changed. The condition which it will check is that if the status is completed, the actions are that it will delete the item from the incomplete task list, and then copy this list to the completed task list. So that's all, and we will just click finish to create the workflow. Okay, we have some error over here, but this you will not see the error because this error has basically come on due to my designer issues. Now what it will do is that it will create the workflow and it will create couple of files. Like it will create the XOML files, the rules files, the XML file. You can read more about XOML files if you see the Windows Workflow Foundation questions and answers video series. Right. So now there we are. We have created the workflow, and this workflow has already been attached to the incomplete task list. Now it is time to go and see that how this workflow will function. Before that, let's do a bit of a IIS reset, because sometimes the workflow really doesn't get attached to the list for whatever reason. So we will just ensure this by doing IIS reset. So now that our workflow is created and we have also attached the workflow with the incomplete task list, what we'll do is that we'll create two tasks in the incomplete task list. One task which is in progress and the other task which is completed. So this is in progress and we'll mark the status as in progress. Right. And we'll create one more task and we'll say that this task is completed. So it's completed. Now this task will be copied to the completed task list and deleted from the incomplete task list. Right. So let me refresh. So the in progress will stay as it is, and you can see that the completed task has been deleted from here and copied to the completed list. You can also see the association of the workflow from settings, list settings, workflow settings, and you can see that this is associated with our workflow which we had created using SharePoint Designer. So that's how we can create workflows using SharePoint Designer. If you really see projects, if you really see scenarios of workflow projects, you can easily create almost 80% of the workflows using SharePoint Designer, how much ever complicated it is. But there are scenarios, where you would like to create custom workflows using the core Windows Workflow Foundation, that is using Visual Studio 2000, 2005 or 2008. So, the first thing you should ask yourself a question is that, do the ready-made workflows like the tri-state workflow or the ready-made MOS workflows solve my problem? If yes, use them. If you think no, then use a SharePoint Designer. And then worst and worst come, think that okay, you need to create a custom workflow using Visual Studio 2005 or 2008. So I hope that this session was useful. In the coming up sessions, we will try to see more custom workflows, or we'll try to see how we can create more custom workflows using Visual Studio 2005 and 2008.